What did your mother confess when they thought they were dying? The machines were beeping too fast. That's the first thing I noticed when I rushed into the cardiac ICU at 11:47 p.m., still wearing my scrubs from my own shift at Presbyterian downtown. Mom's face was gray against the white hospital pillow, oxygen cannula taped to her nose, and for the first time in my 28 years, Eleanor Whitman looked fragile. "Where's Marcus?" were her first words to me. Not, "Thank you for coming," or "I'm scared." Just wondering where her golden child was. "Flying back from Singapore," I said, pulling the visitor chair closer to her bed. His assistant said the earliest flight gets in tomorrow afternoon. Mom's eyes fluttered closed. The cardiac monitor showed an irregular rhythm that made my nurse brain automatically assess and categorize. Post-MI, likely anterior wall, probably needs another catheterization in the morning. "Sarah." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I need to tell you something. In case I don't make it through the night. Mom, you're stable. Your troponins are elevated, but the cardiologist said. Listen to me." Her grip on my hand was surprisingly strong. "There are things I should have said years ago." I'd heard this before. Usually it was about how I should have tried harder in school like Marcus, or why couldn't I have chosen a more prestigious career path like Marcus, or when was I going to settle down and give her grandchildren like Marcus probably would someday. At 28, I'd become immune to her disappointment lectures. "I know I wasn't always fair to you," she continued, "and this was new territory. Mom didn't do apologies. I know I pushed Marcus forward and held you back." The admission hit me like a physical weight. Years of watching her beam when Marcus got into Harvard Business School while barely acknowledging my nursing degree from state. Years of her paying his student loans while I worked double shifts to cover my own. Years of family dinners where his consulting job was so impressive while my work must be so difficult, dealing with sick people all day. Why? The word came out harsher than I intended. Mom's breathing became labored, and for a moment I thought she was having another episode. But she was crying, actual tears streaming down her cheeks. "Because I was protecting him," she whispered. "I was protecting all of us." "From what?" She looked toward the door, as if checking for eavesdroppers, then back at me. "Marcus isn't your father's son." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my own heart rate spike, that rushing sensation in my ears when everything suddenly shifts. "What did you say?" "Your father. David isn't Marcus's biological father. I had an affair 30 years ago. Marcus was the result." I stared at her, processing. Marcus, the favorite. Marcus, who looked nothing like Dad but everyone said took after Mom's side. Marcus, who got the college fund, the down payment for his condo, the pride and protection and endless second chances. "So you gave him everything because you felt guilty," I said slowly. "I gave him everything because I was terrified someone would figure it out. If he struggled, if he failed, people might look closer. Might ask questions." Her monitor was beeping faster now. "I thought if I could just make him successful enough, secure enough, the truth would never matter." The truth. 30 years of family dynamics suddenly rearranged themselves in my mind like puzzle pieces finding their correct positions. Who? The question escaped before I could stop it. Who is Marcus's real father? Mom's eyes darted away from mine. "It doesn't matter now. He's married, moved to Portland years ago. Works in finance." But it did matter. Everything mattered now. I thought about the $80,000 she'd given Marcus for his MBA while I ate ramen noodles and worked weekends to pay for my nursing prerequisites. The brand new Audi she'd surprised him with for his 25th birthday while my Honda Civic died a slow death in her driveway and she suggested I look into public transportation. Does Dad know? No. The word came out sharp, panicked. God, no. "Sarah, you can't, he can't ever know. It would destroy him." I watched her face, really looked at her for maybe the first time in years. The desperation there was raw, genuine. But underneath it was something else, calculation. Even now, even believing she might die, she was managing the situation. 30 years, I said. 30 years you've been overcompensating. I was protecting our family. You were protecting Marcus. And yourself. The anger was building now, hot and familiar but sharper than usual. What about protecting me, Mom? What about protecting me from feeling like I was never good enough, never smart enough, never worthy of the same love? I didn't mean for it to happen that way. But it did happen that way. I stood up, started pacing in the small space between her bed and the window. Every family dinner where you bragged about his promotion while barely asking about my work. Every Christmas where his gifts cost 3 times what mine did. Every time you told people about your children and spent 10 minutes on Marcus's achievements and mentioned me as an afterthought. The cardiac monitor was showing more irregularity now. I should have been focused on that. The nurse in me knew stress was dangerous for post-MI patients, but the daughter in me couldn't stop. "Do you know what it's like," I continued, "to spend your entire life wondering what's wrong with you? Why your own mother can't seem to love you the same way?" "I do love you the same way." Bullshit. The word hung in the sterile air. "You love him out of guilt and fear. You love me out of obligation." Mom tried to sit up straighter in the bed. "Sarah, please. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. I need someone to know the truth, in case something happens to me. What you need," I said, "is for me to keep your secret. Just like everything else, this is about what you need." The silence stretched between us, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of machines and the distant sounds of the hospital at night. I could hear a code blue being called somewhere down the hall, someone else's crisis interrupting our family revelation. "The cardiologist wants to do another catheterization tomorrow," I said finally, falling back into my clinical voice. "Your LED is probably still partially blocked. You'll need medication adjustments and cardiac rehab." "Sarah. You're not dying, Mom. Your troponin levels are dropping and your EKG is stabilizing. You're going to be fine." I looked at her directly. "Which means you're going to have to live with what you just told me." "And so am I." I moved toward the door, then stopped. "Marcus lands at 2:15 p.m. tomorrow. Terminal B. I'm sure you'll want to call him when visiting hours start. What are you going to do?" The question followed me into the hallway, but I didn't turn around to answer it. Because I honestly didn't know. I drove around until 4 a.m., my Honda making that grinding noise that meant the transmission was probably shot. Again. I ended up in the parking lot of the 24-hour Kroger on 5th Street, staring at the fluorescent lights through my windshield and trying to process what Mom had just dumped on me. Marcus wasn't Dad's son. 30 years of golden child treatment, explained in one sentence. My phone buzzed with a text from my supervisor at Presbyterian. Can you cover Jenny's shift tomorrow? She called in sick. A 12-hour day shift, which would pay time and a half since I'd already worked 5 days this week. The money would help with my car repair, but it also meant I'd miss Marcus's grand homecoming at the hospital. I texted back, yes, I'll take it. At 6 a.m., I finally went home to my studio apartment on Maple Street, the one Mom had never actually visited, though she'd driven past it twice and commented that the neighborhood seemed rough. I showered, made coffee, and did something I hadn't done in probably 5 years. I called in sick to my regular shift and went to Dad's house instead. He was in the garage by 7:30, like always, tinkering with his 1987 Camaro. Dad had bought that car the year Marcus was born, said he was going to restore it and teach his son about engines someday. 28 years later, it still didn't run, and Marcus had never shown the slightest interest in anything involving manual labor. Sarah, what are you doing here so early? Dad looked up from under the hood, his face genuinely happy to see me. When was the last time someone's whole expression had changed like that when I walked into a room? Wanted to see how you're holding up, I said. Yesterday was scary. Dad's smile faded. Your mother's going to be fine. Doctors said the blockage was minor. He wiped his hands on an old rag. Marcus called around midnight. He's getting on the first flight out. I know. I was there when Mom called him. Good. Good that he's coming home. Dad leaned against the car. She'll want both her kids there. Both her kids. I studied Dad's face, really looked at him for signs I'd missed over the years. He had my dark hair, my brown eyes, my stubborn chin. Marcus was blonde like Mom, with her blue eyes and sharp features. But genetics were weird sometimes. I'd never questioned it. Dad, can I ask you something? Course, sweetheart. The endearment hit differently today. Dad had always called me sweetheart, pumpkin, kiddo. He'd never had special nicknames for Marcus, just called him son or Marcus. I'd never noticed that before. Do you ever feel like Mom treats Marcus and me differently? Dad's expression shifted, became careful. What do you mean? The money stuff. College, the car, all of it. He sighed, set down his tools completely. I noticed. Believe me, I noticed. Why didn't you ever say anything? I tried, a few times. But your mother. He paused, choosing words carefully. She always had reasons. Said Marcus needed more support because he was less independent, or because his career path was more demanding. Said you were stronger, more capable of handling things on your own. Do you believe that? Dad looked at me for a long moment. I think your mother has been carrying some kind of guilt about Marcus his whole life. I never understood what or why, but it's like she owes him something the rest of us don't. The words hit me like ice water. Dad knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the truth, but he'd sensed something was off for 30 years. Have you ever wondered? I started, then stopped. This was the moment. I could tell him right now, explode the whole carefully constructed lie Mom had built. Wondered what, sweetheart? I looked at my father, because he was my father, completely and without question, and made my choice. Never mind, I said. Just thinking too much. But I wasn't done thinking. Not even close. I stayed at Dad's house until noon, helping him organize his tool shed and listening to stories about his own father, my grandfather who died when I was 12. Dad talked about family legacy, about how proud Grandpa would have been of both his grandchildren. The way he said it, with such genuine belief, made my chest ache. When I finally left, I had 3 missed calls from Mom and a text from Marcus, landed early. At the hospital now. Where are you? I drove to Presbyterian instead of Mom's hospital. Covering Jenny's shift would give me 12 hours to think, and right now I needed the familiar rhythm of work to process what I was carrying. But even surrounded by patients and medication schedules, my mind kept circling back to the same question. What was I going to do with this information? At 3 p.m., my phone rang. Marcus. Sarah, where the hell are you? Mom's been asking for you all day. I'm working. You know, that thing I do to pay my bills. This is more important than work. Family emergency, remember? I almost laughed. Right. Family emergency. How is Mom today? Stable. Good, actually. The cardiologist thinks she can go home tomorrow. Marcus's voice softened slightly. Look, I know we don't always. I know things are complicated between you and Mom. But she really wants to see you. I'll be there tonight after my shift. Sarah. Marcus paused, and I could hear hospital noise in the background. She seemed really emotional today. Kept saying something about things she should have told us years ago. Do you know what that's about? My grip tightened on the phone. She almost died yesterday, Marcus. People get emotional. Yeah, but this was different. She kept asking if I was happy, if I felt like I belonged in the family. Weird questions. I closed my eyes. Even in the aftermath of her confession, Mom was still protecting him. Still making sure Marcus felt secure and loved while leaving me to carry the weight of her secret. Maybe she's just reflecting on her life, I said. Maybe. Listen, I'm going to stay in town for a few days. Take some time off. I was thinking we could all have dinner together once Mom's feeling better. Like old times. Like old times. The phrase tasted bitter. Sure, Marcus. That sounds great. After I hung up, I found myself staring at my reflection in the break room mirror. I looked like Dad, everyone had always said so. But Marcus looked like Mom's family, and now I knew why. He wasn't just my half-brother, he was the son of some finance guy in Portland who didn't even know he existed. At 7 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, this is David Chin, your mom's cardiologist. She's asking for you specifically and seems agitated. Could you come in when possible? I knew Dr. Chin from medical conferences. He wouldn't text unless Mom was really upset. I finished my patient notes and drove to Mercy General, my mind racing through possibilities. When I walked into Mom's room, she was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had in days. Marcus was in the visitor chair, scrolling through his phone. Sarah. Mom's relief was obvious. I was worried something happened to you. I was working. She's been anxious all day, Marcus said without looking up. Vitals kept spiking. I moved to check Mom's monitor automatically, heart rate elevated but not dangerous. Blood pressure slightly high. Classic stress response. Marcus, could you give us a minute? Mom asked. I want to talk to Sarah about some nursing questions. Marcus stood immediately. I'll grab coffee. Want anything, Sarah? I'm fine. The moment he left, Mom grabbed my arm. Have you thought about what I told you? About what you're going to do? I've thought about little else. And? I looked at her directly. I hadn't decided yet. Sarah, please. If this comes out now, it will destroy everything. Your father, Marcus, our whole family. Our family was already destroyed, Mom. You just hit it better. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Fair? The word came out louder than I intended. You want to talk about fair? Do you have any idea what it's been like being the disappointment for 30 years while Marcus got treated like a prince? Keep your voice down. Why? Afraid someone might overhear? Afraid your secret might slip out? I leaned closer to her bed. You know what I realized today, Mom? You didn't tell me the truth because you were dying and wanted to clear your conscience. You told me because you need an ally. Someone else to help you keep lying. The cardiac monitor started beeping faster. You're my daughter, she whispered. I'm asking you to protect our family. I'm protecting the family member who actually deserves it, I said. The question is which one that is. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. Instead of going to work, I called in and drove to the Starbucks on Pine Street where Marcus always got his coffee when he was in town. He'd mentioned it during one of his updates yesterday, some pretentious habit he'd picked up from his business travels. I waited in my car until I saw him walk in at exactly 8:15 a.m. Punctual as always. When he came out with his venti whatever with extra shots, I got out and intercepted him. Sarah? What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said. Away from Mom, away from the hospital. Just us. Marcus checked his expensive watch. I'm supposed to meet with Mom's cardiologist at 9 to discuss her discharge plan. This is more important than the discharge plan. Something in my tone must have gotten through to him because he nodded toward the outdoor seating area. Okay. 10 minutes. We sat across from each other at a small metal table, and for the first time in years, I really looked at my brother. At 30, Marcus had the kind of polished confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. His haircut probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and his casual clothes had that expensive simplicity that screamed money. Mom told me something the other night, I began carefully. When she thought she was dying. She told me she talked to you about some family stuff. She seemed pretty shaken up about it yesterday. Marcus sipped his coffee. Look, I know she's been harder on you than on me over the years. I've noticed, okay? And I've felt guilty about it. This caught me off guard. You've felt guilty? Of course I have. You think I didn't see how differently she treated us? The money, the attention, all of it? He set down his cup. I tried talking to her about it once, maybe 5 years ago. Asked her why she was so much more critical of your choices than mine. What did she say? That you were stronger than me. That you could handle disappointment better, that you didn't need as much support. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I told her that was bullshit, that everyone needs support. We got into a huge fight about it. I stared at him. In 30 years, Marcus had never mentioned this conversation to me. Why didn't you ever tell me you talked to her? Because what was I supposed to say? Hey Sarah, Mom thinks you're tougher than me so she treats you like crap. That would have made it worse, not better. It might have made me feel less alone. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're right. I should have said something to you directly. I should have. I don't know, refused the extra money or something. But I'm not going to lie, the help made my life a lot easier. $80,000 easier. You know about the exact amount? He winced. Sarah, I can pay you back. I've been doing well with a consulting firm, and I could. This isn't about you paying me back, Marcus. I took a breath. This is about the reason why. The real reason Mom treated us differently. What do you mean? Here it was. The moment that would change everything between us. I could see the hospital parking garage from where we sat, could picture Mom in her room probably checking the clock and wondering where her precious son was. Dad isn't your biological father. The words hung in the morning air between us. Marcus went completely still, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. What did you just say? Mom had an affair 30 years ago. You're the result. She's been overcompensating out of guilt ever since. Marcus set down his coffee with deliberate precision. That's not possible. She told me Tuesday night. Some guy who works in finance moved to Portland years ago. He doesn't even know you exist. Sarah, this is insane. Why would Mom tell you something like that? Why would she? He stopped, and I could see the pieces clicking together in his mind. Oh God. She really thought she was dying. And she needed someone to know the truth. Someone to help her keep the secret. Marcus buried his face in his hands. This explains so much. The way she always seemed, frantic about my success. Like she was protecting me from something. He looked up at me. Does Dad know? No. And she's terrified he'll find out. We sat in silence for several minutes. Around us, the morning coffee rush continued, people grabbing drinks before work, students with laptops, normal people living normal lives without family secrets exploding around them. What are you going to do? Marcus asked finally. I honestly don't know. I met his eyes. What do you think I should do? I think, Marcus said slowly, that our family has been built on a lie for 30 years. And I think I finally understand why you've been so angry all this time. Are you angry? About the lie, I mean. Marcus considered this. I'm processing. Part of me is relieved, actually. I never understood why Mom was so intense about my life, why she seemed to panic whenever I struggled with anything. He paused. But yeah, I'm angry too. Angry that she let you suffer because of her guilt. Angry that I benefited from it without knowing. So what do we do now? Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed. It's Mom. She's probably wondering where I am. Are you going to answer it? Marcus looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. Not yet, he said, letting it go to voicemail. I think we need to figure out what we're going to do first. For the first time in our adult lives, Marcus and I were on the same side of something. It felt strange and fragile and absolutely terrifying. We ended up driving around for 2 hours in Marcus's rental car, a black BMW that still had that new car smell. He turned off his phone after the fourth call from Mom, and I put mine on silent after Dr. Chin texted asking if I knew where Marcus was. I keep thinking about Dad, Marcus said as we pulled into the parking lot of our old elementary school. How he used to try to teach me about cars, about fixing things with my hands. I was never interested, and now I wonder if some part of him sensed I wasn't really his. Dad loves you, I said, and meant it. Biology doesn't change 30 years of being your father. Doesn't it? Marcus turned off the engine. What if he looks at me differently now? What if he can't help but see the affair, the betrayal, every time he looks at my face? I didn't have an answer for that. We sat watching kids on the playground during their morning recess, their voices carrying across the parking lot. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. There's something else, I said finally. Something I didn't tell you. Marcus looked at me expectantly. Yesterday morning, I went to see Dad. Started to ask him about the different treatment Mom gave us over the years. I picked at the leather on my purse strap. He said he'd noticed it too. Said it seemed like Mom carried some kind of guilt about you, like she owed you something. He suspects something. Maybe. Or maybe he just knew Mom well enough to see the pattern without understanding the cause. Marcus was quiet for a long time. You know what's really messing with me? I built my whole identity around being the son who succeeded, who made Mom proud. What if none of it was real? What if I was just a project she felt obligated to complete? Your success is real, Marcus. Your intelligence, your work ethic, that's all you. But the opportunities weren't. The college fund, the connections Mom made for me, the safety net that let me take risks other people can't afford. He laughed bitterly. I used to feel guilty about how much easier I had it than you. Now I feel worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. Your mother is asking hospital security to check the parking garage for Marcus. She's convinced something happened to him. Can you please respond? I showed Marcus the message. Jesus, he said. Even when we're having the most important conversation of our lives, it's still all about protecting Marcus. We should go back. She'll work herself into another cardiac episode. Sarah. Marcus turned to face me fully. Before we go back, I need to know something. Are you planning to tell Dad? The question I'd been avoiding. I don't know. Because if you are, I think I should be the one to tell him. This surprised me. Why? Because it's my parentage that's in question. Because Dad deserves to hear it from me, not discover it in some family explosion. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. And because you've carried enough of Mom's secrets. This one shouldn't be your burden too. I felt something loosen in my chest, relief, maybe, or gratitude. For the first time in 30 years, Marcus was taking responsibility for something that centered around him instead of expecting me to handle the difficult parts. What about Mom? I asked. What about her? She's going to fight you on this. Hard. She's terrified of Dad finding out. Marcus's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. Mom should have thought about that before she spent 30 years making you pay for her choices. She created this mess. She doesn't get to control how it gets cleaned up. And if it destroys their marriage? Then it destroys a marriage that was built on a lie. Marcus started the car. I'm 30 years old, Sarah. I can't keep being protected from consequences I never asked for protection from. As we drove back toward the hospital, I felt something shifting between us, not just in our relationship, but in the entire family dynamic. Marcus was stepping out of his role as the protected golden child, and I was stepping out of mine as the forgotten disappointment. But I also knew that once we walked back into Mom's hospital room, the real fight was going to begin. We found Mom sitting rigidly upright in her hospital bed when we walked in at 11:30 a.m., her breakfast tray untouched and her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw Marcus, relief flooded her face. Thank God. I thought something terrible had happened to you. She reached for his hand immediately. Dr. Chin said you missed your meeting about my discharge. We needed to talk, Marcus said, pulling his hand away gently. Sarah told me everything. The color drained from Mom's face so quickly I instinctively checked her cardiac monitor. Her heart rate spiked to 110. Everything, she whispered. About my biological father. About the 30 years of guilt. About why you treated us so differently. Marcus sat down in the visitor chair but didn't lean back, his posture was formal, distant. We need to discuss what happens next. Marcus, please. I'm going to tell Dad. The words cut through the room like a blade. Mom's monitor started beeping faster, alarms threatening to sound. You can't. Her voice was barely audible. It will kill him. Marcus, please, you don't understand what this will do to our family. Our family is already broken, Mom. It's been broken for 30 years. Marcus's voice was steady but I could see the tension in his shoulders. The only difference is now we know why. I moved closer to Mom's bed, my nurse instincts kicking in despite everything. Your blood pressure is climbing. You need to try to stay calm. Calm? Mom's laugh was sharp, hysterical. My son wants to destroy his father's life and you want me to stay calm? David is my father, Marcus said firmly. Biology doesn't change that. But he deserves to know the truth. The truth will devastate him. The lie has been devastating Sarah for 3 decades, Marcus shot back. Did you think about that when you were giving me every advantage while she scraped by? Mom looked between us, and I could see her calculating, trying to find an angle that would work. Sarah, talk to him. Please. You know what this will do to Dad. The fact that she was appealing to me now, after years of dismissing my opinions, would have been laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. Actually, Mom, I agree with Marcus. Dad should know. You're both being incredibly selfish. We're being selfish? The words exploded out of me. You had an affair, lied about it for 30 years, and punished me because you felt guilty about him. But we're the selfish ones? A knock on the door interrupted us. Dr. Chin stepped in, looking concerned. Mrs. Whitman, your vitals are elevated. Is everything all right? Family stress, I said quickly. We were discussing some difficult topics. Dr. Chin nodded knowingly. Post-cardiac event, emotional stress can be particularly dangerous. Perhaps you could continue this conversation after discharge? When is she being released? Marcus asked. This afternoon, actually. Her latest tests look good and she's been stable for 24 hours. Dr. Chin made notes on his tablet. She'll need to take it easy for the next few weeks. No major stressors. After he left, the room fell silent except for the steady beeping of machines. Mom was staring at the ceiling, tears streaming down her cheeks. 37 years, she finally said. Your father and I have been married 37 years. We built a life together, bought a house, raised 2 children. You're going to destroy all of that for what? Some principle about honesty? I'm going to tell him because he's my dad and he deserves better than being lied to, Marcus said. When you go home today, you have 24 hours to decide if you want to tell him yourself or if you want me to do it. Mom sat up straighter, and for a moment I saw a flash of her old authoritative self. I won't let you ruin this family, Marcus. You already did that, Mom. We're just cleaning up the mess. The silence in Mom's hospital room was deafening after Marcus delivered his ultimatum. I watched her face cycle through emotions, panic, anger, calculation, before settling into something I'd never seen before, complete desperation. 24 hours, she repeated, her voice hollow. You're giving me 24 hours to destroy my marriage. We're giving you 24 hours to take responsibility for your choices, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Dr. Chen returned with discharge papers, breaking the tension temporarily. As he explained medication schedules and follow-up appointments, I noticed Mom wasn't listening. She was staring at Marcus with the kind of intensity usually reserved for life or death situations. Which, I supposed, this was for her. Mrs. Whitman, did you hear the part about the beta blockers? Dr. Chen asked. She'll need them twice daily, I answered when Mom didn't respond. I'll make sure she understands. After Dr. Chen left, Mom turned to me with desperate eyes. Sarah, you're a nurse. You understand medical ethics, patient confidentiality. What I told you was said in confidence when I thought I was dying. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't try to make this about professional ethics. You told me because you needed an ally, not because you were making some deathbed confession. Marcus stood up, checking his phone. I'm going to drive you home, Mom. We can continue this conversation there, or you can spend the ride figuring out how you want to tell Dad. What if I refuse? What if I simply don't tell him and forbid you from saying anything? Marcus looked at her with something approaching pity. Then tomorrow evening, I'll sit down with Dad and explain everything. Including how you tried to manipulate Sarah and me into keeping your secret. The ride to Mom and Dad's house was tense. I followed Marcus's BMW in my Honda, which chose that moment to make an ominous grinding sound every time I shifted gears. Even my car was falling apart at the worst possible moment. Dad was in the front yard raking leaves when we pulled up, and his face lit up seeing Marcus's rental car. There's my son. How's your mother feeling? Better, Dad. Much better. Marcus helped Mom out of the BMW while I grabbed her discharge bag from my back seat. Sarah. 2 visits in 1 week, I'm getting spoiled. Dad pulled me into a hug that smelled like Old Spice and autumn leaves. You kids staying for lunch? I was about to make grilled cheese. I caught Mom's expression over Dad's shoulder, pure terror mixed with something that might have been grief. She was already mourning what she was about to lose. Actually, Dad, we need to have a family meeting, Marcus said. All 4 of us. Sounds serious. Dad's smile faded slightly. Everything okay with your mom's health? Her health is fine, I said carefully. But there are some things we need to discuss. As we walked into the house, the same house where Marcus and I had grown up, where family dinners had been exercises in highlighting his achievements while minimizing mine, I felt like we were walking towards some kind of cliff. Dad settled Mom on the living room couch with unnecessary fussing, bringing her water and adjusting pillows. The tenderness in his actions made my chest tight. 37 years of marriage, and he still took care of her like she was precious. So, Dad said, settling into his recliner. What's this family meeting about? Marcus and I sat on the love seat across from Mom. I could see her hands shaking as she reached for her water glass. Mom has something she needs to tell you, Marcus said gently. Something important. Dad looked between the 3 of us, his expression growing concerned. Eleanor? What's going on? Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. Mom, I said softly. It's time. But instead of confessing, Mom did something none of us expected. She looked directly at Dad and said, David, I think I'm having chest pains again. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Dad was on his feet instantly, all color draining from his face. Should I call 911? He asked, already reaching for his phone. Eleanor, where exactly does it hurt? I was moving before I consciously decided to, my nursing training overriding everything else. Mom, I need you to describe the pain. Sharp, dull, radiating? But as I reached for her wrist to check her pulse, I caught her eyes. There was calculation there, not pain. Her pulse was elevated but steady, exactly what you'd expect from stress, not cardiac distress. It's tight, she gasped, one hand pressed dramatically to her chest. Like someone squeezing. Marcus stepped closer, his face pale. Should we take her back to the hospital? I kept my fingers on Mom's pulse, watching her face carefully. Her color was good, no diaphoresis, no actual signs of distress beyond the performance. After 12 years of nursing, I knew the difference between real cardiac pain and anxiety mimicking cardiac symptoms. Dad, can you get her aspirin? I said, buying myself time to think. The regular strength, not the baby aspirin. As Dad hurried toward the kitchen, I leaned closer to Mom and lowered my voice. Your pulse is 88 and regular. Your color is good. You're not having chest pain. Her eyes flashed with something between guilt and defiance. The stress could trigger another episode. Stop. The word came out harder than I intended. Just stop. Marcus was watching our exchange with growing understanding. She's faking it, he said, not bothering to whisper. I am not. Mom. My voice carried all the exhaustion of 30 years. I've seen thousands of cardiac patients. You're having an anxiety response, not heart pain. And using it to manipulate this situation is possibly the lowest thing you've ever done. Dad returned with the aspirin and a glass of water, his hands actually shaking with worry. Here, sweetheart. Should I start the car? The endearment, the genuine terror in his voice, made me feel sick. This man had spent 37 years loving a woman who was now literally faking a medical emergency to avoid telling him the truth. Dad, sit down, I said firmly. Mom's not having cardiac symptoms. But she said. She's lying. Marcus's voice was flat. About the chest pain and about a lot of other things. Dad looked between the three of us, confusion replacing fear on his face. I don't understand what's happening here. Mom made one last desperate attempt. David, maybe we should discuss this later, when I'm feeling stronger. No. Marcus stood up, his jaw set in a way that reminded me suddenly of Dad when he'd made up his mind about something. Dad, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be difficult to hear. Marcus, please, Mom's voice broke. 30 years ago, Mom had an affair. I'm not your biological son. The words landed in the quiet living room like stones in still water. Dad went completely motionless, the bottle of aspirin still in his hands. That's not. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Eleanor, tell me that's not true. The silence stretched impossibly long. Mom was crying now, real tears, not the manufactured distress from her fake chest pain. But she didn't deny it. Oh God, Dad said, and the devastation in those two words made me want to grab Marcus and run from the room. Oh, Eleanor. How could you? David, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. 30 years. Dad set the aspirin down with mechanical precision. 30 years you let me believe. Does he know? The father? No, Mom whispered. He never knew. Dad looked at Marcus with an expression I couldn't read. Did you know? I found out 2 hours ago, Marcus said quietly. Sarah told me. Now Dad's gaze shifted to me, and I saw the moment he understood my role in all this. She told you first. Tuesday night, when she thought she was dying, I confirmed. Dad nodded slowly, still processing. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading, is there anything else? Any other secrets I should know about? The weight of everything, the favoritism, the money, the 30 years of watching Dad love a son who wasn't biologically his while never understanding why his wife treated their actual daughter like an afterthought, pressed down on me. She did it because she felt guilty, I said finally. All the extra money for Marcus, the special treatment, she was overcompensating because she was afraid someone would figure it out. Dad's face crumpled as the final piece clicked into place. And you paid the price for her guilt. The room fell silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing and the distant sound of the neighbor's lawnmower. Everything had finally been said. Now we had to figure out how to live with it. Dad stood up slowly, like he'd aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. He walked to the mantel where our family photos were displayed, graduation pictures, Christmas mornings, vacation shots spanning 3 decades. He picked up Marcus's Harvard Business School graduation photo, the one Mom had insisted on getting professionally framed. You know what's funny? Dad said, his back still to us. I used to wonder why you looked so much like Eleanor's brother Tom when he was young. Same build, same eyes. I thought it was just one of those genetic quirks. Marcus went pale. Mom, Uncle Tom isn't really. No, Mom said quickly. Tom's my brother. The father was someone else entirely. Who? Dad's voice was eerily calm as he turned around. I think after 30 years, I deserve a name. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. Richard Caldwell. He worked at the accounting firm I used for the boutique. Before I closed it. The boutique. I remembered Mom's short-lived business venture when I was around 10, a high-end clothing store that lasted maybe 18 months before she shut it down. She'd always said it was because the market wasn't right, but I suddenly wondered if there were other reasons. Caldwell, Dad repeated slowly. That name sounds familiar. He moved to Portland in 1995. We haven't had any contact since it happened. Dad set down Marcus's photo and picked up one of me from nursing school graduation. Sarah, did you know any of this when you came to see me yesterday? When you were asking about the different treatment? The question felt like a test. I suspected something was wrong with the family dynamics. But I didn't know the real reason until Tuesday night. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know what to do with the information, I said honestly. I needed time to process it. Dad nodded, then looked directly at Mom. Eleanor, I need you to leave. The words hit like a physical blow. Mom's face went white. David, please, we can work through this. I said leave. Go stay with your sister in Millerville, go to a hotel, I don't care. But I can't look at you right now. This is my house too. The house you paid the mortgage on with money we saved while I believed your son was my son. The house where you let me struggle to connect with a boy who you knew wasn't mine while you threw money at him out of guilt. Dad's voice never rose above conversational level, which somehow made it more devastating. Get out, Eleanor. Mom turned to Marcus desperately. You can't let him do this to me. I'm your mother. You're the woman who gave birth to me, Marcus said quietly. But what you did to this family, what you did to Sarah and Dad, I don't know how to forgive that yet. The finality in his voice seemed to break something in Mom. She looked at me with one last desperate appeal. Sarah, please. I know I wasn't perfect, but I'm still your mother. I thought about all the times she'd dismissed my achievements, all the family dinners where I'd felt invisible, all the years I'd wondered what was wrong with me that my own mother couldn't love me the same way she loved Marcus. You need to go, Mom. She stared at me for a long moment, then gathered her purse and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back one final time. This will destroy our family. Our family was destroyed 30 years ago, I said. We just stopped pretending it wasn't. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving the three of us in the sudden quiet of the living room, surrounded by 30 years of family photos that now told a completely different story. The 3 hours after Mom left were the strangest of my life. Dad made grilled cheese sandwiches like nothing had happened, his movements mechanical and precise. Marcus sat at the kitchen table staring at his phone, and I found myself washing dishes that were already clean just to have something to do with my hands. I keep thinking about your 10th birthday party, Dad said suddenly, flipping a sandwich in the pan. Marcus, you remember? You had the flu and couldn't come, so it was just Sarah and 3 of her friends from school. I remembered. Mom had been furious that Marcus was sick, like he'd ruined the party on purpose. She'd spent the whole afternoon making comments about how small my celebration was compared to Marcus's elaborate parties. Your mother spent the entire time complaining that the cake was too plain, that we should have rescheduled when Marcus could attend. Dad's voice was matter of fact, like he was reciting a grocery list. I thought she was just disappointed. Now I understand she felt guilty that you were getting attention instead of him. Marcus looked up from his phone. Dad, I need you to know, I never asked for any of it. The extra money, the special treatment. I actually tried to talk to her about it once. When? About 5 years ago. Told her she was being unfair to Sarah. Marcus set his phone down completely. She said Sarah was stronger, that you didn't need as much support. I should have pushed harder, should have refused the help. Dad slid a sandwich onto a plate and handed it to me. You were her son. You trusted her judgment. That's not your fault. The word son hung in the air between them. I watched Dad's face carefully, looking for signs of rejection or withdrawal, but his expression toward Marcus hadn't changed. If anything, he seemed more protective. Are you going to get a paternity test? I asked. What would be the point? Dad shrugged. I've been his father for 30 years. Some lab result isn't going to change that. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Even after everything? Marcus, you think I loved you because of DNA? I loved you because you were mine. Because I watched you take your first steps, taught you to ride a bike, stayed up with you when you had nightmares. Dad sat down across from us. Your mother's lies don't erase any of that. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Sarah, I'm at the Hampton Inn on Route 9. Room 247. Please call me when you get this. We need to talk. I showed the text to Dad and Marcus. She's not going to give up, Marcus said. Mom doesn't accept defeat gracefully. Dad was quiet for a moment, then asked, Sarah, what do you want to do about this? About her? The question caught me off guard. For 30 years, nobody had asked what I wanted when it came to family decisions. I want her to acknowledge what she did. To me, to you, to our whole family. I picked up my sandwich. But I also don't want her to disappear completely. Despite everything, she's still my mother. And I want Dad to be okay, Marcus added, looking at him with concern. This has to be devastating for you. Dad considered this. It is devastating. But you know what the worst part is? It's not the affair, or even the lie about Marcus's parentage. It's realizing that my wife has been carrying this guilt for 30 years and chose to take it out on Sarah instead of dealing with it honestly. Another text from Mom. David won't answer his phone. Please tell him I'm willing to do counseling, whatever it takes. I can't lose my family over this. She wants to do counseling, I reported. Of course she does. Now that the secret's out, she wants to manage the cleanup. Dad's laugh was bitter. 37 years of marriage, and I'm just now seeing how manipulative she really is. Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed. It's Mom. Don't answer it, Dad said firmly. Not today. We all need time to process this without her trying to control the narrative. But as Marcus reached to silence the call, my phone started ringing too. Then Dad's house phone joined the chorus. Jesus, Marcus muttered. She's calling everyone. Dad unplugged the house phone and we both turned ourselves to silent, but the damage was done. Mom was in full crisis management mode, and we all knew this was just the beginning. She's going to tell everyone her version first, I said. Get ahead of the story. Dad stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard. Let her. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. We just proved that. But I knew Mom better than Dad did. She'd spent 30 years perfecting the art of managing family perception. She wouldn't go down without a fight, and that fight was going to get ugly. My phone lit up with a call from Aunt Linda, Mom's sister. Then Uncle Tom. Then Marcus's phone showed a call from our cousin Jennifer in California. She's mobilizing the entire family, Marcus said grimly. Then maybe it's time they heard the whole truth too. By 6 p.m., the calls hadn't stopped. Mom had clearly spent the afternoon working through her entire contact list, because now I was getting calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years. High school friends, former coworkers, even Mrs. Patterson from down the street. She's telling them I'm having some kind of breakdown, I said, declining yet another call from my old nursing school roommate. That the stress of her heart attack made me turn against the family and spread lies. Dad was still standing by the window, watching the neighbors' kids play in their yard. Your cousin Beth just pulled into the driveway, he said quietly. Sure enough, Beth's silver Lexus was parking behind my Honda. She got out wearing her real estate agent blazer and the determined expression she used for difficult negotiations. Mom called in the cavalry, Marcus said grimly. Beth knocked once before using her key, the one Mom had given her years ago for emergencies. She walked straight into the living room like she owned the place. Uncle David, thank God you're here. Aunt Eleanor is beside herself at the hotel. She said Sarah and Marcus are having some kind of psychological episode and making up stories about affairs, and Beth stopped mid-sentence when she saw our faces. Oh. It's true, isn't it? Which part? I asked. The affair 30 years ago, or the part where your Aunt Eleanor let me think I was a disappointment my entire life because she felt guilty about Marcus's real father? Beth sank into Mom's recliner. She said you were making it up. That the stress of her heart attack caused some kind of false memory or... Richard Caldwell, Dad said without turning around. Portland, Oregon. Works in finance. That specific enough for you? Oh my God. Beth's real estate training kicked in. She was already calculating damage control. Uncle David, what are you going to do? Are you getting divorced? I don't know yet. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how my wife manipulated our family for 3 decades without me seeing it. My phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer from California, probably calling with Mom's version of events. I answered it. Sarah? Thank God. Mom called and said you're having some kind of crisis and Dad kicked her out of the house over some misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Jen. Mom had an affair 30 years ago. Marcus isn't Dad's biological son. She's been overcompensating with guilt ever since, which is why she treated us so differently growing up. Silence on the other end. Then, that's a pretty serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's what happened. I could hear Beth on her own phone in the background, probably calling her mother to report that the story was actually true. But Mom said you've been angry about money issues, that you're trying to cause problems because Marcus got more help with college. Jennifer, do you remember the Christmas when Marcus got that $3,000 laptop for college and I got a gift card to Target for $50? Remember how Mom explained that as practical versus frivolous spending? Another silence. I thought that was weird at the time. It was all weird. Everything about how she treated us was weird. Now we know why. After I hung up, Beth was staring at us with the expression of someone watching a car accident. The whole family is going to implode over this. The family imploded 30 years ago, Marcus said. We just didn't know it. Dad finally turned away from the window. Beth, I need you to deliver a message to your aunt. Tell her that if she wants to have any kind of relationship with any of us going forward, she needs to stop calling people and trying to control this narrative. The truth is out. She can either deal with it honestly or she can lose her family entirely. Uncle David, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. Dad's voice carried a finality I'd never heard before. Your aunt has had 30 years to figure out how to handle this situation. She chose manipulation and lies. Those consequences are hers to live with. Beth left 20 minutes later, promising to deliver the message but clearly hoping she could somehow broker a peace deal. I almost felt sorry for her. She had no idea how deep this really went. At 8 p.m., something I didn't expect happened. Marcus's phone rang with a call from a Portland area code. We all stared at the phone like it might explode. You don't think, Marcus started. Only one way to find out, Dad said grimly. Marcus answered the call, putting it on speaker. Is this Marcus Whitman? The voice was male, middle-aged, nervous. Yes. This is Richard Caldwell. I got a very strange call today from a woman claiming to be Eleanor Whitman. She said there might be something I needed to know about a son. The room went dead silent. After 30 years of secrets, Eleanor had just blown up everyone's life in a single afternoon. Mr. Caldwell, Marcus said carefully, I think we need to talk. The conversation with Richard Caldwell lasted 43 minutes and changed everything I thought I knew about my mother's 30-year deception. She contacted me through LinkedIn this afternoon, Richard explained, his voice shaky through the speaker. Said there was something urgent I needed to know about a son born in 1994. I thought it was some kind of scam at first. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. What exactly did she tell you? That she'd had an affair 30 years ago and that you were. Richard trailed off. This is insane. I'm married. I have 2 daughters. I can't just, why is she telling me this now? Dad leaned forward. Because her secret came out and she's in damage control mode. Mr. Caldwell, did you know Eleanor was married when the affair happened? No. God, no. She told me she was divorced, that she was starting over with the boutique. Richard's breathing was audible through the phone. We only saw each other for about 3 months. When she suddenly cut off all contact, I figured she'd gotten back together with her ex-husband. I never knew there was a child. The pieces were rearranging themselves again. Mom hadn't just hidden Marcus's paternity, she'd lied to his biological father about her marital status entirely. Mr. Caldwell, I said, did she ask you for anything today? Money, secrecy, anything like that? She said she needed me to be prepared in case there were questions, that the family was going through a difficult time and information might come out. She asked if I would be willing to take a paternity test to clear things up if necessary. Marcus and I exchanged glances. Even in crisis mode, Mom was still trying to manage the narrative. Did she mention that she's been giving me extra financial support my entire adult life? Marcus asked. College tuition, down payments, business investments? She mentioned that you'd been very successful, that you graduated from Harvard Business School. She seemed proud, I guess. But also panicked. After Richard hung up, promising to think about whether he wanted any kind of relationship with Marcus, the 3 of us sat in stunned silence. She called his biological father before she tried to fix things with her actual family, Dad said finally. That tells you everything about Eleanor's priorities. My phone buzzed with another text from Mom. Richard Caldwell called me back. He wants to meet Marcus. I think this could be good for everyone, a chance for healing and new relationships. Can we please talk about this as a family? I showed the text to Dad and Marcus. Even now, Marcus said, shaking his head. Even now she's trying to spin this as some positive development instead of taking responsibility for the chaos she's created. Dad stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a beer, something I'd rarely seen him drink. You know what I keep thinking about? All those years I wondered why I couldn't connect with Marcus the way other fathers connected with their sons. I thought there was something wrong with me. Dad, that's not. Let me finish. Dad took a long sip. I used to watch other fathers with their boys and wonder why it seemed so natural for them. Why Marcus seemed more interested in your mother's opinions than mine. Why he never wanted to work on projects together or learn things from me. He looked directly at Marcus. I thought I was failing as a father. Marcus's face crumpled. You weren't failing. You were the best father you could be to a kid who unconsciously knew something was off about the whole situation. And Eleanor knew I was struggling with that doubt and never said a word. Let me think I was inadequate for 30 years. Before anyone could respond, headlights swept across the living room window. A car was pulling into the driveway. That better not be your mother, Dad said grimly. But it wasn't Mom. It was Aunt Linda's white Cadillac, and she wasn't alone. Uncle Tom was in the passenger seat, and as they got out, I could see another car pulling up behind them. The intervention is starting, I said, watching more family members emerge from vehicles. Mom called in everyone. Within minutes, our living room was full of relatives I hadn't seen in months, all wearing expressions of concern and determination. Aunt Linda took charge immediately. David, we're here because Eleanor is devastated and we're worried about this family falling apart over what might be a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Dad interrupted. Your sister had an affair 30 years ago. Marcus isn't my biological son. She's been lying about it ever since. The room erupted in overlapping voices, denials, questions, demands for proof. But Uncle Tom was staring at Marcus with a strange expression. Jesus, he said quietly. You look exactly like Eleanor's college boyfriend. The one from senior year. The room went silent. What college boyfriend? Aunt Linda asked sharply. Tom looked uncomfortable. Rick something. Rick Caldwell. Eleanor was obsessed with him, but he transferred to Oregon State and they broke up. I always thought. He stopped, looking around at all the faces. I always thought Marcus looked familiar. The final piece clicked into place. Mom hadn't just had a random affair. She tracked down and reconnected with her college obsession, lied about her marital status, and built an entire 30-year deception around the result. This was so much worse than anyone had imagined. Uncle Tom's revelation about Mom's college boyfriend hit the room like a bomb. The carefully orchestrated family intervention dissolved into chaos as everyone started talking at once. Rick Caldwell was her college obsession? Aunt Linda's voice cut through the noise. Eleanor told me she barely remembered him. She talked about him constantly senior year, Tom continued, oblivious to the damage he was inflicting. Said he was the one that got away when he transferred. She even drove to Oregon to visit him once, right after graduation. I felt sick. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated pursuit of someone Mom had been fixated on for years before she married Dad. When exactly did she visit him in Oregon? Marcus asked, his voice deadly calm. Tom scratched his head, thinking. Summer of '93, I think? Right before she started seeing David seriously. Dad went pale. We got engaged in September 1993. The math was devastating. Mom had pursued her college obsession, gotten pregnant, then immediately locked down Dad as a backup plan. Every assumption we'd made about this being a moment of weakness during marriage was wrong. Tom, shut up, Aunt Linda hissed, finally realizing he was making things worse. But my cousin Beth was already doing calculations on her phone. If Marcus was born in February 1994, and Aunt Eleanor visited Rick in summer 1993. She got pregnant before she was even engaged to Dad, I finished. The entire relationship was built on a lie. Uncle Frank, who'd been silent until now, stood up abruptly. This is family business. We shouldn't be discussing it with. With who? Dad interrupted. With me? The man who's been living a lie for 37 years? My phone rang, interrupting the family chaos. It was Dr. Chen from the hospital. Sarah, I have Eleanor Whitman here in the ER. She came in complaining of chest pain and specifically asked for you. Is she actually having cardiac symptoms? Her EKG is normal, vitals are stable. Appears to be anxiety, but she's insisting she needs to speak with you immediately. She says it's about preventing a family tragedy. I closed my eyes. Even from her hotel room, Mom had found a way to insert herself back into the center of attention. I'll be right there, I said, then hung up and looked around the room. Mom's at the ER. Claims she's having chest pain again. Another fake episode, Marcus said grimly. I'm going, Dad announced, surprising everyone. If she wants to play games with her health to manipulate this situation, she can explain it to my face. David, maybe that's not wise, Aunt Linda started. Linda, your sister has been lying to me since before we were married. She manipulated our entire family, let me think I was a bad father, and today she contacted her affair partner before trying to reconcile with her actual family. Dad's voice was getting louder. I think it's time Eleanor faced some consequences for her choices. The drive to the hospital was tense. Marcus insisted on coming, leaving our living room full of relatives to gossip and speculate without us. I followed Dad's truck in my Honda, which was now making a new grinding sound that suggested my transmission was completely shot. When we walked into the ER, Mom was sitting upright in bed 3, looking perfectly healthy except for the dramatic way she was holding her hand to her chest. The performance stopped the moment she saw Dad's face. David, thank God you're here. I was so scared you'd never speak to me again. Eleanor, cut the act. Dad pulled the curtain closed around her bed. Dr. Chen says your heart is fine. We know this is anxiety, not cardiac symptoms. Mom's facade cracked slightly. The stress of losing my family is very real. The stress of 37 years of lies coming out, you mean? Dad sat down in the visitor chair, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. Tom told us about Rick Caldwell being your college boyfriend. About you visiting him in Oregon before we got engaged. The color drained from Mom's face completely. So now we know this wasn't some moment of weakness during our marriage, Dad continued. You got pregnant by your obsession, then trapped me into marriage to cover it up. That's not how it happened. Then tell us how it did happen, Eleanor. Because right now, it looks like our entire marriage was a con game. The silence in the ER room stretched until Mom finally broke. Her shoulders sagged, the last of her performance falling away, and for the first time in 30 years, Eleanor Whitman told the complete truth. I was pregnant when I accepted your proposal, she whispered, not meeting Dad's eyes. Rick had made it clear he wasn't interested in a relationship, and I panicked. You were stable, kind, already talking about marriage and family. I thought I could make it work. Dad's hands clenched into fists. You used me. I convinced myself I loved you. And I did learn to love you, David. But yes, initially, I was protecting myself and the baby. Tears were streaming down her face now. And then I spent 30 years terrified you'd figure it out. So you punished Sarah instead, Marcus said, his voice cold. Made her pay for your guilt. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. But it did happen that way, I interrupted. Every single day for 30 years, you chose to protect your lie by sacrificing my relationship with this family. Mom looked between the three of us desperately. What do you want me to do? How do I fix this? You can't, Dad said simply. There's no fixing 37 years of deception. There's no taking back the damage you did to Sarah, or the doubt you let me carry about being a good father. David, please. I want a divorce, Eleanor. The words hit the small ER room like a physical blow. Mom actually gasped, her hand flying to her throat. I want you to sell the house and split the proceeds. I want you to pay Sarah back every penny of the money you gave Marcus that should have been shared equally. And I want you to stay away from all of us until we decide if and how we want you in our lives. You can't take my children away from me. I'm not taking anyone away, Dad said, standing up. I'm letting them choose for themselves, without your manipulation for the first time in their lives. Marcus stepped forward. Mom, I'll have a relationship with you someday, maybe. But first you need to understand what you did and take responsibility for it. Real responsibility, not just words. And you need to get therapy, I added. Figure out why you thought destroying your daughter's self-worth was an acceptable price to pay for keeping your secret. Mom was sobbing now, the kind of desperate tears that came when someone realized they'd lost everything. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did hurt people, Dad said firmly. You hurt all of us, every single day, for 30 years. Those consequences belong to you. 3 months later, I was moving into a 2-bedroom apartment in the nice part of town, paid for with a $47,000 Mom had been ordered to repay me as part of the divorce settlement. Dad had been ruthless about the financial accounting, calculating every disparity down to Christmas gifts and graduation presents. Marcus and I had dinner every Sunday now, usually at Dad's new apartment across town. The three of us had become a family in a way we'd never been when Mom was orchestrating every interaction. Dad had started teaching Marcus about car repair, and Marcus was paying for Dad to take a woodworking class he'd always wanted to try. Mom lived in a condo near Aunt Linda now. I saw her once a month for supervised coffee meetings that felt like diplomatic negotiations. She was in therapy, slowly learning to acknowledge the damage she'd caused instead of explaining it away. The progress was glacial, but it was progress. Richard Caldwell had met Marcus twice. They exchanged emails occasionally but weren't pursuing a father-son relationship. I already have a dad, Marcus had told him. But I appreciate knowing where I came from. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, Dad asked the question I'd been waiting for. Are you ready to invite your mother to dinner? Not because she deserves it, but because you might need closure. I thought about it for a long time. Yes, I said finally. But she sits at the kids' table until she proves she's learned how to be part of this family without manipulating it. Dad smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in months. That seems fair. For the first time in 30 years, I was finally enough.